Before I came up on stage, I was talking to a McGill veteran, and I asked him for a little bit of advice before I came up, and he told me two things. He said, keep it short, and whatever the hell you do, don't mention Fintan O'Toole. So, I promise I'm going to keep it short, but I am going to mention Fintan O'Toole. I felt a slight sense of guilt when I read what Fintan said here yesterday, which was that people are not individually corrupt, but that there is systemic failure. And I say this because for as long as I can remember, I and many others like me have misdiagnosed the root causes of the failures of our political system. I was guilty about thinking of our political system like Donald Rumsfeld, the former US Secretary of Defense, thought about US soldiers in Iraq in 2006. When Donald Rumsfeld visited Abu Ghraib after US soldiers were exposed as having tortured Iraqi prisoners, he made the same mistake in discussing what had gone on there that I and many others have often made when discussing the shortcomings of our political system here in Ireland. And we had all asked the wrong questions. And when Rumsfeld arrived in Abu Ghraib, he was looking for a few bad apples. And, those who were responsible, and he resolved that he was going to get to the bottom of who it was and that they were going to be brought to justice. But what Donald Rumsfeld should have been asking wasn't who was responsible. Donald Rumsfeld should have been asking what was responsible. To put that in an Irish political context, many of us tend to focus on the failings of individual politicians, the so-called bad apples, but we are completely neglecting to look at what the actual issue is. It's the systemic issue. It's the rotten barrel. And I believe that this misguided focus is prolonging and perhaps even deepening our democratic deficit. Professor Philip Zimbardo, who was an expert witness for one of the US soldiers involved in the atrocities at Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, knew that rather than the atrocity happening because of a few bad apples, as Donald Rumsfeld thought, it was in fact that these were fundamentally good people, as psychometric tests showed, but they were products of a very bad system. And Zimbardo knew this because he had manufactured the very same outcomes in a group of college students in 1971, and that became commonly known as the Stanford Prison Experiment. Placed in a bad system, Zimbardo found out fundamentally good people who make fundamentally bad decisions, are negligent and in many cases harmful. I believe that the Irish political system conforms in a slight way to Zimbardo's hypothesis, in which fundamentally decent people, in this case our elected representatives, who I believe fundamentally are decent people, can act in ways that sometimes goes against what is the needs of the people that they represent. And Zimbardo wrote a theory on this, a book on this theory called The Lucifer Effect, in which he outlined a number of the key characteristics of systems that promote that type of behaviour. And I believe that the Irish political system conforms to a number of those characteristics, but I'll restrict myself in brevity's sake to talk about one of them. The 2011 general election saw a huge turnover in TDs. 45% of those coming in had never been in Leinster House before. And I believed at the time that this had the potential to herald somewhat of a democratic dawn in Irish politics, where we had so many young, eager people coming in who hadn't got the baggage of conformity and blind obedience to authority that befits some of the longer-standing members in the Dáil and the Seanad. So why then have so few of our first-time elected representatives in 2011 come out publicly against the government for the state of our republic? The reason I believe that it remains silent in this, that in this democracy there is none so frowned upon as the deviant, the person who puts the greater good ahead of one's own self-interest. Our political system, true to Professor Zimbardo's analysis, offers no safeguards for the deviant, which is why, although I don't agree with a lot of what Lucinda Creighton says, I have great respect for her political courage as someone who had everything to lose and decided to answer to her call of conscience. And if we don't stand up as citizens for the deviants in our political system, until systemic safeguards are put in place to protect and nurture and encourage deviance, then we are going to continue to get a Dáil and a Seanad that is made up of manufactured sycophants. So I would urge all of us to set about overcoming our democratic challenges by first acknowledging that the issue isn't bad apples. The issue is a rotten barrel. A barrel that encourages blind obedience to authority, conformity and self-preservation. Once we focus on fixing the systemic failings of our democracy, instead of focusing obsessively on the actions of individuals, then we can begin to rebuild our democracy and our republic. Thank you.